Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Joseph Ryder Anderson podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Anderson, and today is the episode that I have been wanting to do for quite some time and haven't gotten around to, and that's the follow-up to my original Unital Ring Sword Art Online review and overview. So that episode came out a while ago when the podcast was still starting out, but it's been listened to quite a bit. It's one of my more popular episodes. So I really wanted to put together a follow-up episode focused on Sword Art Online Volume 28. That's the 28th light novel in the main Sword Art Online story. That came out in English midsummer. I think it was July 2025. And back then, I had just watched the anime for the first time not too long before that, and I wanted to read the books from where the anime left off because the story was so captivating to me. And a year later from when I first started watching the show, around a year later, I'm still captivated by Sword Art Online. I just rewatched the entire series, all the movies a couple times, and I reread the Volume 28, and I'm now trying to get through Progressive before the next Progressive book comes out in English later this year. So I had originally wanted to do a review. I've published stuff on the website. So my website is josephryderanderson.com. I've published some guides and reviews and things of that sort on the website that have been really well received. But I really had wanted to do a follow-up episode on Volume 28 and never got around to it. If you're listening to this on the podcast player or you're a podcast player, it's on. This episode should be on all of them. Then you might have been listening to these episodes from the start. But if you are tuning in on YouTube, which I know a lot of my listeners watch and listen via YouTube, you might be surprised to know that back when the original episode came out, I actually wasn't producing videos back then. So those videos were just being fed via my podcast feed to YouTube. So I'm hoping that this one being a little more fleshed out as a video also adds some value and excitement to listeners who I'm sure are desperately awaiting more Sword Art Online news. I feel like every day I see stuff on my feeds of people excitedly awaiting more Sword Art Online stories and things like that. I know it's been something of a drought, but the nice thing is in Sword Art Online, there's always stuff coming out. So we had the Volume 28 come out in English last year. We've had a couple of different manga stories come out. We had just recently some news. So we'll start this with some news before we get into more of the review and looking forward. We did have the 4th manga version for Unital Ring come out in Japan, and I think it's the second one just a couple days ago on January 27th, I think. The second volume for the manga version Unital Ring came out in English. We have the new Progressive book coming out in English later this year. I think it's May or March. I forget which one, but it's later this year, 2026. So there's definitely new stuff coming out for fans, but I think people are really hungry for the next anime. And it's almost kind of comical. I know on X there's been trending this post by somebody. I won't say any names. I don't want to get any fights, but some big account had shared that news that some Netflix live action of Sword Art Online is being produced, but I guess that news was actually from years and years ago. So people are kind of manipulating the news because people are so hungry for more Sword Art Online stuff. People are kind of manipulating that desire in a way that's not the best. Whereas there are actually things coming up that are interesting. For example, I shared this on the website. There's this beautiful cover that came out recently for Sword Art Online. It was for the Shonen Ace. I guess that's a smaller shonen magazine in Japan. And it had this beautifully illustrated cover featuring Asuna and Argo, and this was to celebrate the release of Volume 4 of the Unital Ring manga in Japan. So there's still tons of excitement in Japan. I see stuff all the time of like collaborations and events in Japan focused on Sword Art Online. We definitely have less of that in the States, but when the new anime comes out, which there is news on that, when that new anime comes out, there should be a lot more excitement stateside for Sword Art Online once again. So a couple of more news events or news things to talk about. First, we'll start with the confirmed news, which is that there has been Volume 29 has been confirmed as the next work to be published by the Sword Art Online author, whose name is Reiki Kawahara. And so that Volume 29, following, of course, Volume 28 in the Unital Ring story, is the next work that's going to come out by him. He has a ton of works under his belt. I didn't know that originally. But this guy is working on several different series at the same time, which I don't even know how that's possible. But I guess the next work that's going to come out is Volume 29, and I think people are anticipating that to come out in 2026 in Japanese in 2026, which means we won't get it in English until probably a year later. But still, it just means that the story is continuing on. There's more things to look forward to. And I guess in the broadcast where that was mentioned, I don't speak Japanese, but people have been saying that news of the anime was promised soon, as in this year. So there will be more news about the anime, whatever that is, whatever the original anime film is that's going to come out. Will be coming out. Will be something to be shared about that later this year. Me personally, I feel like it's probably either going to be, most likely, I'm going to go out on a limb. I think it might be a movie about Moon Cradle. So I know I talked about that a bit in the last episode about Sword Art Online, but I feel like that's going to be probably, if I can make one guess, that's going to be what it's going to be about. But we don't know, and we'll hopefully find out sooner rather than later. So also on the Sword Art Online front, we have had, if you've been following the other stuff I've been talking about, which is I talk a lot about on this podcast especially, and on the website, Union Arena, which is the Bandai TCG. And it's picked up a lot of steam in North America. It's super, super popular. I would know that better than anybody else because I have the leading website for it, leading blog for it. And the amount of interest in Union Arena is insane. It's huge. So even though it's not going to be as big as something like a Pokemon TCG or something like that, there's plenty of tournaments going on. I think it's also growing too. I know in my area there's been a lot of new players picking up Union Arena, and I've been hearing about people in their area having like 25 player tournaments and stuff like that. So if you like anime, if you like Sword Art Online, Union Arena is a fantastic way to experience that. I think the thing that to me is, and I know you can do this with like video games and things like that. I don't really play video games, but I do play a lot of card games. And the really cool thing about doing Union Arena, if you're a Sword Art Online fan, is you can really immerse yourself in the Sword Art Online world in a way that you can't really do in anything else. It's also a great way to meet other people who are fans of the show and the anime in the world. It's a great way to meet those kinds of folks. I've met several people who are big fans of Sword Art Online that play Union Arena, and people have come to Union Arena via the website, coming through via some of my Sword Art Online content, have discovered Union Arena. So it's a fantastic thing to get into. The second volume for Sword Art Online just came out, and so it's a really good time to get into that. I got a whole case of Sword Art Online Volume 2, and you can check out some of the beautiful cards that I've gotten from that case. Things like the 2-star Yuki was probably the rarest pull that I got, signed by the Japanese voice actress for Yuki. So that's super cool. Definitely a great card. And then there's a lot of other beautiful cards too from virtually every part of the show. So in Union Arena, the energy colors are based off of different arcs or different movies. So in Volume 2, we just got the purple energy color, which is based off of the ordinal scale movie and the progressive movies. And so my favorite deck, actually out of Volume 2 so far, is the purple progressive deck. It's super fun. Focused on Asuna, Mito, and Kirito from the movies. And the mechanics also in Union Arena, the mechanics are based off of the lore. So it's so weird, but I don't, it's funny to say this, but playing the purple progressive deck feels like what it feels like to watch the movie. So there's really nothing else like it. That's one of the bigger news items for Sword Art Online lately, is that release of Sword Art Online Volume 2. And definitely a great entry point for fans of the show and the anime and everything else Sword Art Online. So that's all of the news that I wanted to share about Sword Art Online. Let's also talk about the Volume 28. So Volume 28, for those who haven't read it, was actually a really good volume. It sort of picked up right in the middle of a lot of action between Alice and friends in the Central Cathedral battling against the enemy forces. And so I think the beginning of Volume 28 to me was the strongest point. Again, I think at this, I said in the last episode, but at this point of the story, the stuff that's going on in the underworld is a lot more exciting right now than what's going on in Unital Ring. Unital Ring kind of feels like it's sort of slowly moving towards something, while the stuff in the underworld is taking center stage. So a couple of really cool things that happened in volume 28. One of them is the Fanadio is out of deep freeze and is out on the front lines fighting and as strong as ever. But we also get to meet a new Integrity Knight. And this Integrity Knight might be new to people who have only read the books or watched the anime, but those who have played the games probably know this character named Idis. And this character, I guess, was in the... I only know this after reading the book, but I guess this character was in the games and a pretty popular character in various Sword Art Online games. So that's super cool. And she's kind of got a very, like, pleasant nature, which is funny because she has these really powerful darkness energy powers. So she has, like, these really cool powers, wields like a traditional Japanese katana, which is a little unusual in the underworld, where the weapons tend to resemble more European weapons. So that's interesting. But she's a really, like, very bubbly sort of personality, very pleasant character to be around. And she ends up befriending Alice, sort of acting like a big sister to Alice a bit. So I have the feeling she's going to play a big role. We're talking about volume 29 coming out soon. I have a feeling she's going to play a very big role in volume 29. Other than Idis coming back, I think one of my favorite moments from the volume 28 is actually there's a moment where, again, spoilers, I probably should have said that before this, but spoilers for volume 28 if you haven't, or maybe you haven't read the volume 28 and you want to know what goes on. But there's a moment where Kirito comes back from the space station. He was battling Istar up there, trying to save Aelin, comes back to save the Central Cathedral, which is under attack. And he has to activate the Central Cathedral to basically get it out, launch it up into the sky. I guess it has those capabilities. It seems like he probably gave it those capabilities when he was Star King. So he has to get it up out of the way, because if they can't really do anything, they're sort of trapped because they can't really battle the enemy forces, because then that risks harming innocent civilians. And so they just have to get that Central Cathedral out of there to save all the frozen knights on those floors and all of that stuff. So, but in order to activate this flight capability, he needs himself, but he also needs Asuna. And so Asuna shows up just in the nick of time, helps activate these special hidden capabilities, and they launch the ship up out of harm's way. And I think that's essentially, I don't know if that's midpoint, something like that. It's like almost maybe midpoint of the story, or not quite midpoint, maybe the first third of the story is about that. All this very intense action, really cool to see everybody fighting it out in the underworld again. And then the story immediately pivots and gets a little slower, but actually it pivots in a really cool way into this story about Asuna, where she's going to this cafe that she used to go to with her mom, and she's meeting Argo there, and a mystery character. And guess who the mystery character is? It's none other than Mito, who we know from the Progressive films. So this is really interesting because Mito actually hasn't been in the Sword Art Online light novels until now. She actually wasn't even in the Progressive light novels. I guess she was a made-up character for the Progressive films, which I think was really good. I think she was really cool in the Progressive films, helped grant a lot of backstory to Asuna. So I think it was a very wise move to include her. But here she is showing up as a character in the light novels who knows Asuna, but interestingly enough, she doesn't have that dramatic backstory where she essentially betrays Asuna, right? So that's one of her defining characteristics in the Progressive films, is she betrays Asuna, and that bothers her and kind of puts a mar on their relationship, right? That they have to overcome. The author says in the afterword he didn't want to do that because it was a little bit too, I can't remember exactly what he said. You have to go read it yourself. But he basically felt like that was too dramatic of a moment for them. And this character doesn't have that. So this character knows Asuna, but doesn't have that sort of subplot of having betrayed her. So it's a different kind of relationship, but definitely, again, we get the feeling that Mito will have a very big role in the books moving forward, and possibly volume 29. So that's really cool to see that. I think another interesting thing from the conversation between Asuna, Argo, and Mito is they're talking about this menthol character. And I actually didn't notice this the first time I read the book. I picked up on it on the second time reading the book. This menthol character that that Kikuoka is very interested in. And Argo is saying something about how this character might have been the one that Laughing Coffin learned all of their nefarious ways from. So it's some sort of SAO survivor. I have the feeling this character probably is Mutasina, which gets us to the other point, which is that Mutasina is also featured in this book, and it turns out she is the intruder that Kirito originally went into the underworld to find. And she's in league with Eastar and the enemies for the Unital Ring arc. So she's a big bad guy. She's in Unital Ring. We've already seen her a bunch in Unital Ring, and we've seen what she's capable of, especially from a strategy perspective, where she's able to go toe to toe with Kirito from a strategy perspective. But now she's in the underworld. She seems to be the intruder. We don't know what she's all about. And I would not be surprised to find out that she was also this menthol character from the SAO days. So essentially she's a survivor of SAO. Would not surprise me. But we don't know that yet. We're going to find out in volume 29. But I really like this. This is one of my favorite moments in Unital Ring in general, is the sort of cafe setting between these three characters. And I think it'll be really cool to see how Mito develops in the coming novels. Now, the other thing too is Aelin. I know a lot of people like Aelin. We finally get insight into Aelin's backstory. And essentially his backstory is he doesn't know who he is. So we still don't know who Aelin is. It's still a really cool opening to the final chapter where it goes over a lot of his background, but we don't know. He doesn't know who he is really. So maybe we'll find out more about that in volume 29. Maybe he has some kind of a relationship to Yu-Gi-Oh! We don't know. So that's super interesting. But he is currently captured by Eastar, and hopefully we'll get out soon, but we don't know. Maybe Kirito will try to go and rescue him in volume 29. But all in all, volume 28 was really cool. I really enjoyed it. I think that we're definitely setting up for a lot of really potentially exciting things in volume 29 and the volumes after that. So again, I hope that you enjoyed that episode. So just wanted to do kind of a catch up on some of the news that's come out for Sword Art Online, and also wanted to go over the volume 28 and share some of the things that might be coming up in volume 29 since it's been confirmed. But if you like that, check out the website www.josephwriteranderson.com, and make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. And next time we'll be back with more Union Arena content. So until then, keep on battling.